Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Testing Out Tools. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at Skaffold, a tool by Google that will help you rapidly iterate on your Kubernetes application when you're developing it. So basically, if you're like me, when you're developing a Kubernetes app locally, you gotta build a Docker container every time you make a change, push it up to a registry, then change your Kubernetes YAMLs to make sure that it's updated, or maybe delete pods, things like that. And then finally, you kind of get the updated version. So from the time you make your change and hit save on your file to the time that it's actually deployed in your Kubernetes cluster, it can be a lot of time. So the whole point of Skaffold, at least from what my understanding is it's trying to minimize that time, so when you hit save, it does all that other work automatically, and so you don't have to mess with that kind of stuff. So let's get started. Let's first take a look at deploying a Kubernetes application normally. So basically, I have a Kubernetes application that I'm working on, and I'm going to basically make a change and then go through the steps that I would normally do to update that and then test it out, see if it's working. And then let's go ahead and look at Skaffold, basically look at how to install it, how to set it up, and then try the same exercise out using Skaffold instead. Okay, so here I kind of have my default Kubernetes setup. You can see here I basically have a Node.js server, the Dockerfile, Kubernetes YAML that has a service and a deployment. So let's take a look at those. So basically, you can see here, it's just an Express app. It's going to say hello world, listening on port 3000. And then let's look at the Dockerfile. So the Dockerfile is just a simple Alpine Linux. Again, installing all the dependencies, it's listening 3000 and starting. And then in our Kubernetes file, I have both my service and my deployment defined. So here in my service, it's pretty simple. It's type load balancer, so we'll get a public IP address. And in our deployment, again, simple deployment, our image is going to be on Google Container Registry. And the important thing to note here is I have an image pull policy always. And so I always use an image pull policy always when I'm developing an app, rapid iteration, things like that. And we'll take a look at why in a second. So in this case, I'm going to be deploying to an actual GKE cluster. Most people normally develop on something like Minikube, but I use Google Cloud Shell. I use a Chromebook, so Minikube is not really an option for me. So I actually just develop on a cluster. Working for Google gives me that opportunity, which is great. Okay, so how does my normal development thing look when I'm using Kubernetes without Skaffold? So let's take a look at our index.js. Let's make it say something else. Instead of hello world, let's make it say hello testing out tools. Okay, cool. So save this file. Okay, so let's just look at what's going on right now. So if I do kubectl get services and I go to this IP address, we'll see that it just says hello world, right? Okay, so what are the steps required now that I've saved the file to actually make this say hello testing out tools? So the first thing I have to do is build the Docker container. So I'm going to be using Google Container Builder, and I have the command saved somewhere here. Okay, here we go. So it's a pretty simple command. Oh, this is not it. Here we go. gcloud container build submit. And then I'm going to give it a tag. I'm going to say gcr.io smart spark, which is my project right here. And then say Skaffold test 1.0. So I'm actually not going to change the tag. I'm going to leave it as 1.0. And so what it's going to do is actually going to overwrite the previous container. And I don't really care because I'm just doing rapid iteration. I haven't checked this into Git. I haven't done anything. So I'm just kind of rapidly iterating. So it's the same tag. So I'm going to submit that build. And so it'll going to tar it up, send it to the cloud service, and actually build and push that to the container registry. So of course that takes some time. Can't really get around that. And while that's going on, let's actually go look at that. So if I go to the container registry here, let's go to our images, and it's going to be called Skaffold test, which is here. So you can see I have this 1.0 image. It uploaded about 13 minutes ago. And now it's uploaded the new one. So if I refresh that, you can see that it uploaded it just now, and it has a 1.0 tag. And of course, the old one is still there, but it's now untagged. So if I hit refresh here, it's still the old version. So this is where the image pull policy always comes in handy. So what I like to do, can't type clear. What I like to do is just delete the pods, and then the image pull policy always will actually just force it to download from the registry the latest version. So what I like to do is, so for example here, you can see that I have one container running, test deployment. It's 11 minutes old. So now I just do kubectl delete pod, and I give it that label app test app. And so it'll delete that pod. And now if I do get pod, it'll create the new container. Obviously it's pulling it down from the registry, so it's going to take a little bit of time. Let's see what happens. It's running. So now if I hit refresh, in theory, cool, it's uploaded. So basically, I had to do 3 things, right? 1, save the file. 2, build the container and push it to the registry, which I was using with Google Container Builder. And then I had to delete the pods so that Kubernetes would automatically pick up the new container and run it. So that's been my typical workflow when I'm developing with Kubernetes, and it's been pretty good. But Skaffold kind of promises a little bit more. It promises the ability to just hit save and then have all that happen automatically in the background. So let's take a look at how that works. Okay, so here we are at the Skaffold GitHub repo. And let's just look at the README real fast. So Skaffold is a command line tool that facilitates continuous development for Kubernetes applications. You can iterate on your application source code locally and deploy to a local or remote Kubernetes cluster, etc., etc. Handles the workflow for building, pushing, and deploying your application. Okay, cool. So let's look at this. So no server-side component. I like that. Detect changes in your source code and automatically build, push, deploy. Perfect. That's what we want. Image tag management. Stop worrying about updating the image tags in Kubernetes manifests to push out changes during development. Okay, so it looks like because of that, we actually don't need to do the image pull policy always thing and kill the pod. It seems like it should take care of it automatically. Existing tools and workflows, whatever. Multiple application components. Okay, cool. All right, so let's skip all this stuff, whatever. All right, where is it getting started? Okay, getting started with Kubernetes engine. Go here. Okay, let's do that. Okay. Create a cluster, clone the Skaffold directory. All right, let's do that. Okay, let's go up and do this. Okay, so we should have the code. Let's see, Skaffold. Okay. Some kids outside my apartment. Okay, let's now look at the next step. Getting started. Okay. Okay, install Skaffold. So we just randomly curl a binary. I think it's Linux. Okay, and I don't know. Let's just do that. And move it to our bin directory. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it somewhere else. I'm going to put it into home sandlord bin instead. So this is my local thing. Cloud Shell, if you don't know Cloud Shell, it preserves your home directory but no other directories after a while. So what I'm going to do is instead put it into a special path in my home directory that's part of my path. And so this way I'll have the tool when I reboot my Cloud Shell. So, all right, cool. Skaffold is installed. Okay, so the sample application will use a simple Go process that logs a statement, blah, 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 blah. Change the references in Skaffold YAML and K8 pod YAML to point to your container registry. Okay, so it gives us a sed command that should replace it in both files. So let's run this. And of course, we're going to use that project that we have. In fact, we could use a environment variable here because Cloud Shell has the environment variable for the project built in. But you know what? We're just going to paste it in because it's only 2 commands. So scaffold.yaml. And the other one, I think, was k8pod.yaml. Okay, so let's take that. Boom. Okay, cool. So we should, let's just look at what's in those files. Okay, so build, kind, config, artifact, image name, GCRs. Okay, great. So we called scaffold example. And it looks like it's automatically picking up our project ID here too. Okay, so that looks cool. And then in our K8 pod, I'm assuming this is just the Kubernetes, yeah, pod. Okay, so it's just gonna run a Kubernetes pod here. Maybe there is no, let's look at other stuff in this directory. So it looks like those are the only 2 YAML files. So probably it's going to just run a pod. That's what I'm assuming. Let's look at the Dockerfile real fast. Yeah, just a standard Go Dockerfile. All right, cool. So let's see what happens. Okay, so run Skaffold in dev mode with the GCB profile enabled. This will use Container Builder to build new image from the local source code, push it to container registry, and then deploy your application to your Kubernetes. Okay, interesting. So I guess this flag, if you don't put it, it'll probably use like the local Docker, and maybe if you're running something locally like Minikube, I'm assuming it would just work that way. But I'm assuming for Google container registry, we need to give that flag, which is fine. So let's do that. Okay, cool. So it looks like it is starting the build already. I guess it's detected that it hasn't built this yet, so it's going to just start the build and push up the initial copy of it. Okay, that's cool. So let's wait for that to finish. Let's go back here and look. Should see pretty quick. So starting deploy, deploying. Oh, interesting. So it looks like Skaffold is actually going to do a deployment too. Okay. Starting deploy. Let me open a new tab real fast. Watching for changes. Okay. Interesting. So it looks like it's actually reading the logs from our container. Okay, so let's see about that. New log line. Okay, so it's actually reading the logs from the Docker container running in Kubernetes in the remote cluster. So we actually test that out. So let's say kubectl get pods, just see what's going on. Okay, so it looks like getting started is there. And so it is running on the remote cluster. And let's do kubectl logs and actually get the logs from this thing. And yeah, so it's actually streaming the logs from our container. Okay, so that's really interesting because in my method, if I wanted to read the logs, I would actually have to run the kubectl logs command, which can be really annoying. So this is actually better than what I'm doing. Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so let's stop this and let's see if we can get Skaffold to work for our application. Okay, so let's look at again what is in here. I just want to understand what's going on in the scaffold.yaml. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so it looks like there's a deploy section, and it's going to deploy everything with k8-star. Okay, so it's actually using a wildcard to find all of our Kubernetes YAMLs. That's really cool. So I can just say app-star, and it'll do the service, it'll do the deployment, maybe a persistent disk. Okay, so that's really cool. And I'm assuming maybe it can do multiple Docker containers as well. Something I have to figure out later, maybe a different time, but let's let's take this and then bring it to our scaffold test application here. Okay, so I guess this is the end of this. So let's try some new things out. So let's again, let me just copy this right here, and let me cd into that. Okay. Ooh. Weird. Okay. Okay, so let us go to my code. Make it a little bigger. Okay, so it looks like from here, I need this scaffold.yaml. So let us copy that to my code, and then now I'm not sure if you can give it a different name or not. I'm assuming it just looks for that scaffold.yaml as a default. I'm sure you can give it a different name, but I don't really care. Okay, so let's go back here. Now in this, I should have scaffold.yaml. Perfect. Okay, so let us modify scaffold.yaml. In this case, it's going to be scaffold test. And my Vim skills aren't really great. I have definitely forgotten how to use Vim for a lot of times. In the manifest, let's just leave that. And what we will do, oh, I just noticed something else. So that profile, this profile is called GCB. Okay, very interesting, because this command that we ran up here, -p GCB, it's selecting the profile. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. I didn't understand what that P flag was. So I guess it's just picking that profile, and that's saying use Google Cloud Build with this project. Perfect. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so in theory, let's just start from scratch. Let's delete all the things we have right now, just so we're have a clean slate. And then maybe we'll try stuff out later. Actually, let's look at what's in this k8.yaml. I just want to make sure that everything is good to go. So before we get too crazy, so it looks like it's just a standard Kubernetes YAML. So in theory, if Skaffold does what I think it does, Skaffold dev p gcb okay, obviously. So let's move our k8 YAML to a k8 all.yaml. That's pretty cool. So it actually knows that we don't have any files called that. Okay, so now in theory, okay, so it's actually going to build it. So now I'm curious what it gives as a tag. I'm assuming it's going to, let's see. I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure what it's going to do. So let's see. Yeah, see from this, it looks like it's not giving it a tag. So I'm curious what it's going to actually do. Okay, unchanged, watching for changes. Okay, so let's refresh that. So there's a latest tag and a dirty DC whatever. So it did give it a tag. That's good to know. So let's refresh this. Nothing should change. Okay, everything's working as we expected. Now let's go and make some changes. So I want to see that logging happen. So let's add in some logging here. So I'm gonna make this a multi-line function now. Okay, cool. And let's add some logging. Let's go console.log do we see this in hashtag real time? I don't know. I'm pretty bad at this stuff. Okay, so hello testing out tools. Now with Skaffold. Okay, so, oops. So in theory, again, once I write this file, it should automatically do everything, right? So I'll write quit, and let's see what happens. Boom, it actually did trigger automatically. Now, unfortunately, this is never going to be as fast as us running Docker build locally, because it has to, upload the code to the cloud and build it. I mean, you can see it's pretty fast. It takes about, 10 seconds, something like that. Let's see right here. Deploy complete in 24 seconds. So it's not terribly slow. 24 seconds is not a long time to wait. And now, in theory, if I hit refresh, nothing happened. Okay. Again, it said unchanged. It did make a new tag. So maybe I'm doing something wrong. Let's, what we can do is actually look at what's running. So say cube get pods. Okay, so the pod hasn't been updated yet. That's interesting. Let's go back to the Skaffold documentation and maybe we can understand what's going on. So let's see, concepts. The deploy step ensures the most recent artifacts are running in the cluster. Each deploy has parameters to define how you want your app to be installed and updated. Okay. Where is the deploy? Publish artifacts? Maybe. Some documentation here. Let's check that out. Okay, here we go. Here's some better docs. No, it's just the getting started. Let's see. Skaffold dev. Watch your source code. Yeah, okay, so, not sure. Let's look at the configuration file. I mean, this is what we read before. Okay, let's look at some examples. Using it's funny. Microservices at Skaffold. Okay, so let's see what this is, the microservices one. Let's go look at the code there because I should have it. Okay, so let's Control-C this. Oh, it deleted the service. Wait, what? Why did it do that? So, don't use Skaffold for your production services, because when you stop it, it'll delete the service. Which kind of makes sense when you're testing things out, because you want it to clean up. Makes sense? Weird. Okay, so we definitely don't want to do this with our pre-existing stuff. So let's get deployment and just clean everything up. Makes sense. You really, you want to start with Skaffold for your everything, right? Okay. Doesn't have autocomplete, and that's okay. All right, cool. So let's go and look at that directory. So Skaffold. Examples. Microservices, I think that's what it was. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this way. Skaffold.yaml. Okay, so it is actually building 2 images here, which is cool. And then there's 2 sets of manifests. So let's just look at the Leroy from Leroy Jenkins, I'm assuming, Leroy Web. Leroy Web. Okay, Kubernetes, and then, okay, so this is a deployment. So this is what I want. Let's cat it. Not recat. Whoa, big one. Oops. So service type node port, all fine. And a deployment. Okay, interesting. So the image here has no tag. So I'm assuming that Skaffold uses the latest tag, and that's how it works. And which is why mine didn't work, because in our code, let's look at that. In our code, we actually had the tag defined, so it would always pick this one. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. So Skaffold requires you to not use a tag. Okay. So again, in theory, let's try this out. So let's run that Skaffold command. Okay. Curious if this will build again. Okay, so it does build again. Already have image. No. So it is building again. That's fine. Again, only about 20 seconds for everything, so not slow at all. Okay, so now, oh, cool. We're getting our logs. Okay, so that is super cool. Seems to be working. So let's get that IP address. Should take about 30 seconds, a minute, whatever. That's really cool. Okay. While this is going, let's do another kubectl get. Just want to see what's running in the pods. Okay, so it is running just one pod. So it is running a normal Kubernetes deployment, and nothing is running on the server, which is cool. I do like that a lot, that it's all running on my local machine, the Skaffold app, and it's not something I deploy to Kubernetes. Things like Helm and stuff, you deploy things to the Kubernetes cluster, and it's just more pieces that you have to maintain. So I do like that there's no server-side piece. Especially, this is like not a production thing, right? This is just when you're testing out your code. I think that's perfect. Okay, it's taking a little longer than normal. That's weird. Let's check out our load balancers. It's going to be in the network. The moment I go here, it's going to spin up. Just watch. Oh, there it is. Literally the moment. All instances are healthy. Okay. Let's just get the IP address. Oh. My mouse decided to stop working there. Not sure why. Oh, that's why. So it's still pending. All right, let's see. So when it's pending like that, there's a chance that something is actually wrong with the service. I've seen this happen before where it just sits at pending, and basically like something is kind of wrong with the something in the Kubernetes like manifest somewhere. So let's just edit this service. Whoa, bunch of labels. deployed with Skaffold, type load balancer, status load balancer. Okay, so maybe the Skaffold thing is like messing up the this load balancer. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of this demo, and honestly, Google Cloud Load Balancer costs like money to run, and so if you're doing local development, I don't think you'd be using a load balancer normally. So instead, let's ignore the fact that the load balancer isn't spinning up. In fact, you know what? Let's go edit. Yeah, I just did that. Let's go edit this. And just remove that load balancer and see what happens. So let's go type cluster IP. I think that's how you spell it. It should have cluster IP invalid. Probably the C has to be lowercase. Oh, you know what I have to do? Okay, so unfortunately, you can't switch from a type load balancer to a type cluster IP because it just does not like that. I mean, I'm sure there's a way. It's like very complicated, but I don't care. So let's just actually we don't need to do anything here. I think it should have deleted that service. Okay, so actually let's see. Didn't delete the deployment. That's really weird. So converting YAML to JSON, mapping values are not allowed in this context. I don't know what that means. I'll figure that out later. Okay, cool. So it looks like it's going to build every time you start, even if it hasn't changed from the previous time. That's an interesting... it's fascinating. Okay, which is fine. It's just like a 20-second, again, build, but it's kind of like every time you get started, you gotta wait for it to boot up, basically. Okay. So now the service should be created without a IP address. First exiting dev mode because the first deploy failed. Oh, yeah. That was dumb. I forgot to change this. Okay. Wait for this one more time. While it's going on, I'm just going to look up what the expose command is. Proxy, or what is the word for it? Go expose pod proxy. Funny thing is I have a whole video about doing this, but you know, everyone forgets. Actually, let's go look at that. Let's go look at my blog post. So, here we go. I'm not even logged in. That's hilarious. Okay, so I want to do this proxy. Okay, so we just run kubectl proxy. Okay, it's running great. Let's run proxy. Okay, so now let's go open that up. Great, we got it. So it'll be not localhost because Cloud Shell uses a different thing. Don't need this anymore. Namespace is default. Service name will be test service. And the port name, just leave that. Okay, cool. Don't need a port name. Okay, cool. So it is running. And in theory, we should see, there we go. Our logs are coming out. Sweet. Okay, so what did we learn about Skaffold. I think we learned a few things. So first of all, don't use a tag in your Kubernetes YAML for our containers. If you do use a tag, it won't work. You have to use basically latest. That's how this works. Don't create a service and a deployment beforehand. Let Skaffold manage all of that to start with. Don't use type load balancer when you're on Google Cloud or any of the other clouds. Instead, use the proxy to access it through the Kube API. That's an interesting one. It kind of makes sense. I mean, you don't want to spin up a load balancer for your development. I'm not sure why it broke though. It's pretty interesting. And yeah, that's kind of it. So let's make a change and see what happens. Again, let me open up another one. This time. Okay. Let's index HTML. Now in theory, this should just work. What I'm curious about is what happens if I add another dependency to my Node app. So okay, let's do that. Let's find something stupid on npm. Npm color like I don't know what's a really dumb thing. Let's like string reverse. I'm sure. Okay, look at that. There's a freaking package for string reversing. Okay, awesome. Not sure why there's a full package for this, but you know, it's Node, so there's packages for everything. Okay, so let's see. Did it do another build? It did. So it actually triggered another build, even though all we did was an npm install. Okay, so what I want to see now is in Skaffold, is there a way to kind of do like a ignore kind of thing? I mean, it doesn't really matter. Again, it takes only 20 seconds to run the build. And you get so many free build minutes with Google Cloud Builder, it doesn't really matter. I don't know. The documentation is, you know, it's a young project, just came out recently, so I don't expect there to be much. I wish there was some more explanation of the Skaffold YAML. Like, what are the different things you could put in it? Maybe I'm just not looking. Okay, so here's an example. So this manifests build. So these seem to build, push, deploy. No, they don't really map to that either. Let's look at these example files. Maybe there's some more stuff in here. Not sure. Okay, anyway, let's go back here. Let's just reverse this string. All right, how does this library work? Okay, let's actually don't need that. Let's just do this. Wow, this is pretty old. Still using var. Okay. Again, I don't use Vim correctly. I know. So rev reverse, and again, in theory, once I hit save, it should build. There it is. Okay. And it should push it up. The next thing I want to test is an error. Let's see what happens when we have an error in our code. Obviously, if you're using a compiled language, it'll probably just stop at the build stage. I'm not sure how we can test that out with Node.js. I mean, we can... I'm not sure. Okay. So, at this point, let's refresh. Still the old one. Wow, it took a little bit more time that time. There are more dependencies now. Oh, there we go. perfect. That's exactly what the team needs. And the logs are streaming out, which is cool. I really like this logs thing. I mean, that's kind of one of the most annoying parts about Kubernetes. And I'm assuming that if you have multiple containers, it'll stream all of the logs. And I assume that because it's actually writing out the container name, which is this, and then the container inside of the deployment as well. Cool. Okay, so that was a quick look at Skaffold and the getting started experience. Honestly, in my opinion, I liked it. It definitely has some advantages over just doing it yourself. It was kind of interesting to use. I didn't expect some of the things that happened, but I think I'll start using it more for some of my own projects. It definitely has its advantage. I love the streaming logs. I mean, that was a great part of it. I like how it does the automatic build and push and redeploy without you having to do anything. That does save a lot of steps and some manual work. Of course, using it on a remote cluster does have some sort of like lag time, and I'm sure if you're using it locally with Minikube, the lag time would be almost instantaneous because the Docker build would be really quickly. But yeah, I think it's a really cool tool. I'm definitely going to use more of it. And of course, let me know what you want me to try out next time. I have some ideas myself, but I'm always curious to know what you guys and gals want me to try out. Until then, I'll see you on the next episode of Testing Out Tools.